Hi, I'm Jennifer with One Woman Rising, and today is my most personal interview to date. I'm honored to interview a woman who has not only transformed my life, but the lives of many other women. Amy Medling is the founder of PCOS Diva, and for those of you who are unaware, PCOS is one of the most common endocrine disorders that affects women. About 10% of women with symptoms that range from weight gain, depression, acne, hair loss, loss of cycles, and others. And for me personally, my journey with PCOS was one of frustration, and I just longed to feel fully feminine, to have a normal cycle like other women who I perceived to be these beautiful lunar creatures. And after I started applying some of the holistic examples from Amy's website in PCOS Diva, I was able to regain my cycle, my health, and really feel more vibrant than I ever had before. So I'm honored to interview Amy because she's helped me in my personal life. But today's interview isn't about PCOS. It's actually about the woman behind the forum that's helped so many people. And the goal of the interview today is twofold. First is that we could learn from Amy how she was able to heal herself holistically and then go on to be inspired to help heal so many others. And I would hope that through that, you'd be inspired to increase the commitment to your own health. And then second, the goal of the interview would be to learn some of her pillar strengths that enabled her to start PCOS Diva, so that maybe we could incorporate those pillar strengths in our own lives. And the two pillar strengths that she's going to teach on are consistency and also creating daily habits that support you. Amy, thank you so much for letting me interview you today and just being our One Woman Rising.
Oh gosh, so what a beautiful intro. Thank you. And I'm really honored to be here and excited to answer your questions and share a bit about my journey.
Thank you. I spoke just a little bit about PCOS Diva and the organization you created, but I was wondering if you could maybe take us back to the Amy prior to PCOS Diva and the Amy who maybe herself was struggling with PCOS and what that woman was like.
Sure. Well, I didn't really know that I had PCOS. I don't think I was actually ever diagnosed till I was 30. So I struggled, but really didn't have the name PCOS to associate with that struggle. But it probably began pretty much back at puberty, where I noticed that things weren't exactly the same as my friends. As you said, it wasn't this elegant sort of lunar cycle that I was experiencing. I had absent periods, very sporadic, but I also was experiencing some of the not so great symptoms of PCOS, like hair loss that was attributed to stress of school. And, I was also experiencing the hirsutism and some hair growth where I didn't want it. And I also had a lot of hypoglycemia that doctors didn't really identify. I had a lot of headaches, and I would actually pass out at certain times, if I had skipped a meal. But of course, I was gaining weight and, not eating well and skipping meals. And so my lifestyle certainly was exacerbating my PCOS symptoms, but I didn't know that. And of course, my mother took me from doctor to doctor, dermatologists and OBGYNs, and I know that at one point, doctors suggested that it was kind of all in my head.
Wow.
Yeah, and when I was off on my own in college and trying to kind of get answers for myself, I remember sitting in this really cold exam room and, waiting to find out why I haven't had a period in 4 months. And the doctor telling me that basically that she was going to have to jump through hoops one day to get me pregnant, but sort of sent me on my way with another prescription for the pill. And it wasn't until years later when I was trying to get pregnant for the second time that I got a PCOS diagnosis. But through all of those years, I just felt like nobody really understood what I was going through. There was times of depression and anxiety and extreme fatigue and brain fog, and I just kind of kept moving forward, hoping that I could find another answer. And it wasn't until I actually visited a naturopath after the birth of my second son, when I really reached kind of my rock bottom, and I was finding it very difficult to care for my children and kind of be the mom and wife that I wanted to be. That I was really forced to look for alternative treatments, and that's what really led me on the path of healing, was kind of the advice that I got from my naturopath.
That touches me so much, because I know in my own life I wouldn't even be able to have the stamina that I have to go on by myself, not having children, without the tips and that you've given through PCOS Diva. So the fact that you were able to make it through, to push, to start this organization after reaching that bottom is huge. I just realized that through the work you do, we don't have to suffer. Some of us don't have to suffer in having young children and the symptoms of PCOS. We get to be able to have a more energy-filled life because of this research that you've done, because of the website you've created, because of the guidance you give.
Well, that's my hope. I mean, I hope that I can shortcut people's path to healing, and then it didn't have to be a 10-year process like it was for me. It could be much faster. But I want to just back up for a second. When that doctor did tell me that they would have to jump through hoops, and then in later years I was told that I would never get pregnant without fertility treatments, and then never get pregnant without fertility treatments, sorry. But I ended up having a little girl at age 37 when I kind of got when I was living this healthy diva lifestyle. But I think what was so important is I never really accepted infertility as my truth. I knew inside that I was meant to be a mom, and I would have kids one way or the other. And I think that really saved me, that mindset of hope and possibility, where I think so many women get crushed by that diagnosis of infertility associated with PCOS. And they don't leave room for hope. They think that it's just not in the cards for them, and they've let some doctor kind of tell them that. And so I think the mindset and being open to possibilities and always move forward with hope is so important.
What was it that the naturopath that you went to after your second child, what was it that she did, and her advice that she gave you, that helped you move through?
So up until that point, my treatment was very much pharmaceutical based. This drug is going to help. So I was on metformin and spironolactone and the pill, and then I went to see a fertility specialist who had me on guaifenesin and Actos and just this litany of drugs that I just took without question. And it seems like every one that was added to my regimen just made me feel worse. And if anybody who's been on metformin, they know that there's a lot of GI issues that just are not pleasant. And I swore that once I got pregnant, that was it. I was going to try a different route. And so that's what led me to the naturopath. And the naturopath just really opened my eyes to the possibility of using diet, lifestyle changes, and supplements to heal my body. And as I experimented with these supplements and with my diet, and really understanding how food was making my body feel. And I also, during that time, discovered some wonderful books that I actually just reconnected with the author on Twitter this week, which was kind of exciting for me. She was sort of one of my heroes, but this Dr. Kathleen DeMasons, she's has her PhD in addictive nutrition, and she wrote the Sugar Addict's Total Recovery Plan. And so using her concept of really recording what you eat and how that's making you feel emotionally, mentally, physically, and being able to identify how certain foods were affecting your body. And I was so out of touch with my body that again, I was taking all of these pharmaceuticals, and I was just sort of just, whatever the latest diet advice was. I mean, if you look at my bookshelf, it's filled with old diet books. So I was just so disconnected with my body. So I actually needed to get a glucometer to understand how food was affecting my blood sugar, so I could actually see the numbers and see what was happening and why I was feeling so lousy. So making those connections with how food was making my body feel helped me to make empowered choices for myself. So, I no longer wanted to eat pizza because I knew that the pizza was attributing to the fatigue and exhaustion that I would be feeling later in the afternoon. And it seems like I would make that connection, but I never really did. So I was really able to move forward from a place of empowerment, having that information.
Wow. As a woman with PCOS, when I first started getting advice, I didn't want to trust necessarily the advice that I was given because I tried so many other things. And it took me actually feeling better, not even one day or 1 week, but over the course of a month, and then seeing my body change. Was it the same for you, or did you pretty much just know that there's a better way and here's this naturopath, like I'm starting to feel better with these food choices, or was it a slow progression?
I think it wasn't, it had been slow for so long, but once I kind of found this secret sauce between making that connection with the food that I was eating, and I immediately started feeling better and taking supplements like omega-3s, and I was very vitamin D deficient. So once you get your vitamin D optimized, your omega-3 optimized, you start taking magnesium to help yourself relax. The anxiety reduced, and it just propelled me forward, and I just had kind of like this new zest for life. Yeah, and I always loved nutrition, and thinking that I was feeding myself what was healthy. As I mentioned, I had every diet book that was, I think, written in the late 80s, early 90s, and that I call it the fat-free snack well era. So, I loved nutrition information, but I just feel like I was being fed the wrong information for my body. And I think that's important, that, women that are listening, that there is no one-size-fits-all approach to eating. For any person, like the ketogenic diet might work great for your friend, but it might not work well for you. Or, a paleo diet might work great for your husband, but, you need a little bit more carbohydrates. So that's why it's just so important to get in touch with how food is making you feel, and kind of make those choices from that place rather than what you're being told in the doctor's office or, in a book.
So after you had this new zest for life because you were holistically healing yourself and finding what foods worked for you, what supplements worked for you, what made you go on to then start PCOS Diva and start this forum to help so many other women?
That's an interesting question. So at the time, I was seeing the naturopath, but I also had a reproductive endocrinologist who, is like an OBGYN, but has extra training in endocrinology. And she was great, but she was very much mainstream medical, and didn't really think that, obviously diet played some role, but the supplements that I was taking and things like apple cider vinegar to help manage my blood sugar, she thought that was all pretty woo-woo. But I would come armed with PubMed studies on a lot of the supplements that I was taking and the apple cider vinegar. And she became, a believer because my lab results dramatically shifted. And so as she was seeing my progress and my great results, she saw a lot of other patients with PCOS, and many of them, like me, could not tolerate the common drug that's given, which is metformin. And so she actually would asked me if it was okay if she would give those women my phone number, so I could talk to them and tell them what was working for me, because she was so impressed with, what I was doing. So it was really the joy that that I realized from talking to these women and helping them that I wanted to do more of it. And I wanted to share what was working for me, because it was just so thrilling to see these women's lives improving as a result of the information I was giving them. So I think that that's what really propelled me to get the information out in a bigger way. And at the time, that was really starting my own blog, when blogs weren't as prolific as they are today.
When was that? How many years ago?
So that would have been like 2005 or so.
Okay.
Yeah, 2005. I started writing, and then so that was when I was seeing the doctor, and then I think 2008 was when I really started blogging on a regular basis.
Did you notice right away that there were women out there seeking advice for PCOS, or was it a little slower?
No, it was really surprising, because I did it sort of in a way just for me as a creative outlet, and to have a source that I could direct these women that I was talking to on the phone. And I never in a million years thought that people across the continent, would be reading my blog posts and responding to them. And then people started reaching out to me asking to be coached and if I would take them on as a client. And so I went back to school at that point and got to the Institute of Integrative Nutrition and became a certified health coach, and kind of hung up my shingle and started taking clients. And I don't do one-on-one coaching right now, but over the course of my one-on-one coaching, I coached over 100 clients one-on-one, and ended up developing an online program called Jumpstart, which I'm thrilled to say over 4,000 women have participated in my Jumpstart program since it came out in 2012. So,
congratulations! That's a huge number of women.
It's great, and just so rewarding to hear how my protocol have really changed their lives for the better. And they've been able to, these women have been able to have babies after difficult struggles with fertility, and and just feel better. And I really see it as the work that I do as helping women move beyond the pain and struggle of PCOS so they can live the life they were meant to live without PCOS holding them back. Because each one of us has a purpose for being here. And I think a lot of times chronic illness, something like PCOS, is just so encompassing. That's all we think about, our symptoms and how it disrupts our life, that we're really held back from doing the work that we're meant to be doing here.
One of the reasons why I admire you so much is because, you freed me from the fatigue of PCOS and some of those other pains associated with PCOS, but you give us, through these tips, that newfound freedom to be able to live life without the PCOS symptoms. You really do that.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, and I know that feeling, and I mentioned that Dr. Kathleen DeMason's book about the sugar addicts recovery program, and I was a sugar addict, and that was so consuming to think that I was this really bright, talented woman who had control over so many areas of her life but could not control her sugar cravings, and would end up at the bottom of a bag of Chips Ahoy at the time, and just and feeling horrible about myself, and that just really held me back. So once I was able to get over that, it was such a sense of freedom, and now I could take all of that brain energy that I was using, trying to figure out why I was doing what I was doing, and apply it into a more productive way.
Did you always know that PCOS Diva was going to be successful as far as once you started it and started helping these women, or was there ever a time when you felt this isn't working out, or was it always successful?
I don't know if the success part really mattered to me. I think it's just, I was just and even today, just doing what I'm called to do. I definitely feel led. opportunities that come my way, and I just keep saying yes, I guess, to what intuitively feels right for me, and keep moving forward. And I think the success becomes a byproduct of that, rather than, the end goal. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense.
Okay.
Even as I asked you the question, I felt that intuitively that'd be your answer from seeing what you put out there. And it's almost as if you do it for one woman, two women, and it just happens to be thousands of women that you help because you care so much about improving people's lives.
Yeah, and I mean, that's how it feels. It just amazes me sometimes when, I get emails, and actually somebody stopped me in the coffee shop the other day and said, gosh, a friend of mine said, the PCOS Diva, and this woman was telling my friend like what an impact PCOS Diva has made on her life. And it's like when I hear those stories, it just kind of blows my mind. But I guess I am just speaking to that one person that was like me, 15 years ago, really struggling.
So talk a little bit about the PCOS Diva name. I've heard the story, but just for the audience that's watching.
Yeah, so when I decided to write the blog, I knew that the name was PCOS Diva, but it was really because of my husband, because he started calling me a diva. And it was through this journey of taking care of myself. I think of a diva as a woman who takes extreme self-care, and I think a lot of people have this negative connotation of divas. Like I'm thinking like Mariah Carey, that only wants green M&Ms or something in her dressing room, but it's a woman that's very particular about what she wants and what she needs in order to thrive, and advocates for herself. And that's kind of what I started to do. And there was this one particular evening, my husband and I took our boys to a restaurant, like your typical steakhouse, and I had ordered a steak, and they asked me what the sides were, and I said, well, I'd really like a sweet potato. And they said, well, do you want that loaded? I was thinking, what the heck is a loaded sweet potato? It was like marshmallow and cinnamon sugar. I thought, no, I'll just have it with cinnamon. And they said, well, we don't have just plain cinnamon. And I said, well, then I'll just have it with butter. And they said, well, we only have margarine. So it was just ridiculous, this back and forth. And by the time, I had ordered the salad with the oil and balsamic vinegar and made sure it was olive oil and not soybean oil, my husband looked at me and he's like, gosh, when have you become such a diva? And I was a little offended at first, but then the more I thought about it, I thought, that was like a real aha moment. It's like, that is exactly what I need to do in order to take care of me and take care of my PCOS, so I can take care of him and my boys. And I think so many women are afraid of putting themselves first because they think that's selfish. And and I really want to communicate that it isn't. It's so essential if you want to be the best you that you can be.
Do you have challenges now with the fact that you have 3 children, a husband, this big organization that you run, and managing your own self-care?
Yeah, absolutely there's challenges, and I have to, constantly remind myself that this all can't happen unless I make myself a priority. And
good advice.
And I have, I call it my sweet stuff list. It's just little things that help renew me and recharge me so that I can, be a caretaker. And it might be something as simple as, taking a pause before my kids come home from school and making a cup of, I made you a cup of my loose leaf tea. It's just something that's really kind of nourishing to me, and it's a little habit and ritual that helps to center me and kind of, I'll sit by the window and just gaze out at the window and take take 10 minutes before the kids come home and just relax and regroup, and that's self-care. And sometimes, I'm really blessed to be able to work from home and set my own schedule, and I'll go and set the timer for 25 minutes and go take a cat nap. But that's ways for me to recharge, or I'll go for a walk, or I love going to the bar studio around the corner and do a bar workout, and that really feeds me. So it's so important to find things that feeds you, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and keep your cup full, because and my husband knows now when my cup is empty, because I become grumpy, irritable, resentful, and so those are all kind of cues. And overwhelm, those are all cues to let you know that it's time to start filling that cup again.
What are your go-to daily habits when you feel that your cup is on empty and you feel that overwhelm? What would you say if you feel that? What do you go to initially?
So I definitely make sure that I'm eating right, and I usually will and hydrated. So I start my day most days with a big glass of water, and then I go on to hot water and lemon before I have any like tea or coffee. I mean, I really like the butter coffee, like
Okay.
bulletproof coffee.
Okay.
But I make sure that I make sure that I'm really hydrated before I have the coffee or tea, and then I make sure that I have a protein breakfast, because I have to have my blood sugar stable and hydrated in the morning, making sure that I have I'm taking my supplements. And we were talking earlier, taking supplements, sometimes you kind of get into a rut where you stop taking them, and I do too, but I have to realize that that's a real act of self-care, and I will be able to kind of be my optimal self if I'm taking my supplements. So making sure that I have my supplements, and making sure that I have time to just pause during the day, like with my cup of tea, or even if it's just taking a few deep breaths. I think so many of us forget to breathe, the deep breathe, and that's such a powerful way to kind of center yourself and kind of reduce that anxiety and overwhelm. And something that I really love and that really feeds me is listening to books on, I use Audible, but listening to uplifting books that feed my spirit and keep me kind of in a positive place, because I tend to be sort of glass half empty, and I need to be fed to shift my mindset, my mindset. So just, when I'm grocery shopping, folding laundry, kind of doing those mundane tasks, I always have my earplugs in, listening to something that's uplifting, and that really feeds my spirit and fills my cup. And it's something so easy to do. And then I love a good bath.
How do you find your next book? How do you decide which book you're going to listen to next?
I have some of my favorite authors, and I like fiction and nonfiction. So I'll listen. Usually I have a nonfiction book that I'm reading by my bedside, and I'll often listen to a fiction book, and that kind of is a fun escape. But I love just reading reviews and looking at what other authors are suggested. So
Nice.
No real secrets there.
Okay. Just was wondering, the same thing for me in my life. Sometimes the thoughts in my mind get so negative that if I don't replace them through listening to someone else, then I kind of get more down. But the minute I infuse positivity through even listening to a book, same as you, I'm kind of glad I do something that one of the people that I admire does. Listening to
Yeah, and trying to stay away from social media.
Okay.
I find that just really can often kind of suck the life out of me.
So I wanted to ask you, when I was first diagnosed with PCOS, I went into a little bit of a victim mode. Like, why me? Why can't I be like everybody else? And I'm sure that's not uncommon. So how do you coach someone out of that, or what are your suggestions for coaching someone out of that victim mode?
Well, first of all, I think it's so important to know that that's normal. I mean, that's such a part of kind of the grieving process. And when you're given a diagnosis like PCOS, where there is no cure, it's something that it's going to be with you, not just through your reproductive years, but beyond. I think you have to go through Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief, and you may not go through all 5 stages, and they might not be all in the perfect order, but that denial and bargaining and pity, I think, is part of that. And I certainly went through the pity party, but I had to move from that place because when you're a victim, there's not a lot of control. You're giving up your control, and when you start moving, like just even taking little baby steps by starting to try some of these, the habits that I was just talking about, it puts you into a place of power and kind of can slowly move you out of that place of being a victim, and you move forward. And I'm working on a book right now. My last chapter is called Moving Forward with Gratitude, and I think that ultimately you can get to acceptance and even beyond, which is gratitude for having an illness like PCOS. Because for me, it was a real wake-up call. It was a wake-up call that I needed to pay more attention to all the different facets of myself that I was ignoring. I think maybe because I was a new mom too, and I was probably the way that I was brought up too, as a mom that probably didn't take as much self-care for herself. It was probably what I was emulating. So it was a real wake-up call for me. And in the end, I'm thrilled because it opened up the opportunity to kind of find my life's purpose, and also to really live a healthier life than I would have, I believe, if I didn't have PCOS.
Wow. It wasn't until I found your site and I listened to some of your podcasts that I started viewing PCOS as somewhat of a gift, like you had mentioned, or somewhat of a blessing. Can you speak a little bit more about maybe some of the women that you've coached and their success stories, or just different ways that you've seen women kind of come to that conclusion in their own lives?
Well, I think it's so interesting because when women come to me, certainly they're in a place of distress, and they're looking for kind of that acute answer. How can I feel better? And it's and I can get them feeling better, as I mentioned, just by eating the right foods and taking some supplements and moving your body and reducing your stress. You can feel better in a pretty short period of time. But I think the real power of working on you and through a health issue like PCOS is that you end up sort of rediscovering yourself, rediscovering kind of your passions and things that you want to focus on. I mean, I have had women, through working through my programs, have realized that they're not in the right career, they're not in the right marriage, they're not doing what they really feel like they've been called to do. I've had several women, probably a dozen women, go on to be health coaches and want to serve others in a bigger way. And so I think it's that kind of that process of self-discovery that ends up happening when you're just kind of in the midst of just trying to feel better. You kind of blossom, and that's why I love the idea of a butterfly for PCOS, because it's sort of like you're in your cocoon working on yourself, and you end up just kind of transforming and becoming this just greater version, the best version of you, or this is like what you're striving for. But I think a lot of these women move closer to that ideal.
How does it feel to be the catalyst for all of that in women? I mean, how does it feel to wake up in the morning and know that your direct actions of the advice that you give and opening doors for women to see that there are holistic options, how does it feel to be the woman behind that for other women?
Well, honestly, I will have to say I don't really think of it that way. I mean, I think that I just every day I get up and I love learning and I love sharing what I've learned and what's worked for me. So I think it's just getting just doing what I'm doing and hoping that it will touch somebody in some way, or somebody will take a little nugget of something. And as I'm inspired by lots of other people too, I think we're all sort of interconnected, and it's certainly rewarding, and I love thinking about helping people. And it is a big responsibility, but I think if I just keep working on being the best version of me, that's all I can do.
We appreciate your best version. I know I do. What were some of the struggles you faced in starting PCOS Diva?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I mean, I think the biggest struggle that I faced was, and I face probably on a daily basis, is, am I enough? I think a lot of women feel that. Like, am I enough? Is what I'm saying really of value? And I think you just have to realize that you are. And I think, so many of us think that we are less than, and I think, comparison is the thief of joy, right? We're comparing ourselves to other women, what images that we're seeing on TV or what we're reading in our social media. But I think just realizing that we're all unique. We all have an authentic gift to give, and what I was saying in PCOS Diva, or what I was writing about, somebody else could be writing about that too, and it may not, and to me may not feel all that special, but the way that I say it, or the way that I project it, or my tone, or something unique to me could touch somebody in a way that somebody else couldn't. So I think that's important. I mean, if anybody's listening and is, wanting to take a step forward in their life or their business, and if that fear of being not enough is holding them back, they need to just step through that fear. And I think the other thing, a lot of people feel like they have to know exactly all of the steps along the way to create a business, and what that's going to look like. And I think so much of businesses sort of evolve as you move forward. Like, you don't, I didn't really know what the end result was going to be of the blog that I started, and never thought that I would have a podcast and would have, products that I developed, or would be writing a book for a major publisher. That wasn't even a consideration. I just kept stepping forward. So I think that's the other piece of advice that I would say is, don't feel like you have to know the end of the story before you begin. Just begin.
So good, Amy. So good. I struggle myself with this, to feel enough to interview you, to feel enough to be here.
But you
Such
are.
good words. Thank you. What's next in the journey for you?
I am writing a book, and that's it's terrifying in a way. Really putting my story out there. In book format, something that's been a dream, but it's also, again, kind of touches into that fear of being enough. Gosh, will people buy it? Will people read it? Is it going to end up in the bargain bin at Barnes & Noble in a month?
Hey, it got to Barnes & Noble.
So, that is, a big next step, and everything that kind of comes along with that, and the publicity, and the marketing, and but again, I can't think about what that end, you know, is it going to be a New York Times bestseller? I hope so, but you know, I just got to keep stepping and keep getting up every day and you know, writing the next, you know, 1,000 words and just trusting the process. So, you know, I think what's next for me is just again, just being led and trusting my intuition and knowing that I'm enough, and it'll all unfold.
Have you gotten better at trusting your intuition?
I think so. Yeah, the more you do it, the better you get. Yeah.
What lessons from PCOS Diva or your PCOS journey do you hope to instill in your children?
Well, certainly I hope that they learned, you know, I've taught them how important it is to take care of your body. You know, and I hope that they've seen how important it is to take care of themselves and how they need to fill their cups. But I also know that they see that I'm living, you know, at this point in my life, I think using my gifts and my talents to make the world, you know, a better place in some way. And I mean, as a mom, I think that's, you know, what you hope is that your children will in turn, you know, use their God-given gifts and talents to, you know, and make the world a better place. So I hope that's what they take away, that they will, you know, move forward and without fear, or if they have fear, move through it. I'm always telling them, feel the fear and do it anyway. So, you know, I hope that they've taken that from my journey.
Okay, you mentioned consistency as being really important pillar strength. Could you highlight that a little bit more about what consistency means in your life?
Well, I mean, consistency for me, in terms of building my business, is just having like a few habits that you commit to doing no matter what. And early on for me, it was posting one positive quote every day on Facebook. I did that every single day for probably 5 years. I've kind of gotten off of that, and I need to, because the positive quote is not just for people that follow my page, but is also for me. And just having that little, I love quotes because it's just like this little nugget of wisdom that you can just kind of pop in your head for the day, and kind of help inspire you. So, you know, I kind of think of them as little touchstones. So that daily quote, the hot water and lemon, you know, is something that if I don't have that to start my day off, it's just a little off. But having that kind of sets me up to make more positive choices for myself during the day. So that would be a really, you know, healthy thing for me. You know, I have lots of other little healthy habits that I do, you know, over the course of the day, and I kind of teach some of these in my programs, and we'll talk about them in the book. But it's just, you know, I think of them as touchstones. You know, it's something when you're feeling like a little unhinged, you know, if the day's kind of getting away from you or your business is getting away from you, you can kind of hold on to them and feel, I guess, it like feel a little bit more in control. So getting back to consistency, I think that's why it's so important, because in order to keep making those consistent, to make progress, you've got to take those tiny, consistent steps forward. And it isn't like this big leap. You know, I think, you know, sitting here and, you know, I've been blessed that PCOS Diva has touched so many lives and it's been successful, but it didn't happen overnight. You know, it's been these small incremental steps taken slowly over time that has created, you know, a flourishing, thriving business, and you know, has helped me create a flourishing, thriving life.
So who's in your support structure?
Oh, my support structure. Well, certainly my husband is my rock. He's, you know, talk about him all that much, in this journey, but he absolutely is kind of my cheerleader behind the scenes, and is always encouraging. And I have great relationship with my mom, and she's I have lots of cheerleaders in my life. And some great friends too. So, I'm very fortunate to have a wonderful support system. And then I love the women, the PCOS divas who have kind of adopted my lifestyle. They cheerlead me and support and love me. And, as much as I support them, they support me. So, I'm very blessed.
I feel that you have given me, with knowing that I have PCOS, feeling like I was given it for a reason and that I'm stronger than PCOS, and even maybe it doesn't have a negative connotation. Much like the word diva could have a connotation that is not as positive or one that is. So you've given me that strength to know that PCOS is maybe a blessing in disguise.
Oh, well, then I've given you a great gift. And I think of it now as just something that, my family's tall. It's hard to tell me sitting here, but I'm about 6 feet tall. And my daughter who's 8, is the tallest child in her 2nd grade. And she was just asking me today, Mom, what are the good things about being tall and what are the bad things about being tall? And we were talking about them, and to me, PCOS is the same way. It's like being tall. There's some wonderful things about having PCOS, but then there's some, things that, gosh, I bumped my head, or, I can't wear, certain clothes, or, I have big feet. But so, as anything in life, there's kind of pros and cons, but life is so much better when we focus on the pros, right, and the cons. So that's, I think that, having PCOS, once you start feeling better, because certainly it's hard to focus on the positives when you're not feeling good. But when you can move forward with that, from that place of gratitude and see it as a gift, your life will be so much more joyful and meaningful.
Thank you for letting me interview you today and agreeing to let someone who you didn't know is some small company that no one's heard of come into your home. Really appreciate it. So thank you, Amy, for letting me interview you and for agreeing to be our One Woman Rising. And would you share a little bit about the PCOS Confidence Grant?
Well, thank you for interviewing me. It's been really a pleasure, sharing my journey. I hope that it'll inspire somebody to sort of take on their health and their life in some way. But I wanted to give back to the PCOS community in a way that would really help women with PCOS kind of move beyond that pain and struggle of PCOS. And something that was really difficult for me early on in my journey was, the hair and skin issues. And my life changed when I had laser hair removal. And I wanted to be able to give that opportunity to other women who couldn't afford it. So through PCOS Challenge, they're a nonprofit PCOS charity organization. They manage the PCOS Confidence Grant, which I've endowed over multi-years to help women with PCOS who cannot afford laser hair removal or electrolysis or dermatology treatments to get the help that they need. And that grant is awarded, multiple grants are awarded twice a year for women. So if this is something that you struggle with, please go on and apply to the grant at PCOSchallenge.org.
Awesome. And Northwest 58th Street is a small company that makes handmade vegan bracelets, and they made one special for this interview today. And it has a butterfly on it, which is the symbol for transformation, and then the fern, which is a symbol for endurance. And we made it a special for this interview so that we could give $5 for each bracelet sold to the PCOS Challenge Confidence Grant.
Oh, that's awesome.
So,
Well, thank you. And the bracelet is really beautiful, and
thank you.
I love it. I'm going to enjoy wearing it. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for watching and being a part of our community.